Hey guys, just a quick reminder, we have brand new t-shirts over at theyeti.com/thatonevideogamer. We got 2 new shirts, the Buff Boys Fitness shirt and the Legend of TOVG shirts. We also have a special bundle that includes special collectible cards. Go over there and check them out right now. And don't forget, Defend It is now back in case you missed it. Once a month on Tuesdays. Thank you guys for all your support. Another top 10 to soothe the souls, and burns from last week's Dark Souls 2 video comments. I know I made a few mistakes, guys, from last week's video, including mispronunciations and missing a pretty big secret completion bonus, and I apologize for my ignorance. I hear you guys loud and clear. A lot of you are really angry, and it makes it seem like I didn't play the game, or that I was just a f***ing idiot, or sometimes both, and I get that, but sometimes things slip through the cracks here on the show. You know, I'm completing games 6 days a week non-stop, and last week I was going to a convention. Look, regardless of these excuses, I'm going to make it up to you. There's going to be a Dark Souls 2 update video that talks about everything I messed up, everything I missed, and more in the future. Alright? Cool? Sweet. So, now that's all out of the way, let's today talk about scary games that aren't scary. Or at least, games that I don't think are scary. They probably scare someone out there, but they don't scare me. 'Cause I'm a big boy. Sometimes. I'd say it's within a game dev's best intentions to evoke some sort of emotion with their game, right? If it's something comedic, make them laugh. If it's something heartwarming, make them feel something in their hearts. If it's something wrong or weird, make them feel uncomfortable. But yet there's a whole genre of games that focuses entirely on fear and terror, and it started back in the golden age of film. Horror games, whether it be about ghosts, serial killers, or aliens, have aimed to make players feel a variety of feelings that stretch from terrified to sometimes just being a little bit uncomfortable. So today's top 10 asks the question of, what happens if a game doesn't do what it's designed to do? Here are my top 10 terrifying, scary games that don't actually scare me. Similarly to great horror films, there are great games out there that are wonderful, but on the other side, there's a whole lot of B-rated horror films and games out there that miss the mark. But you know, let's throw a wrench in all of this out there. Some of these games on this list are in fact fantastic games, while others are really, really bad. So this is almost like a fail top 10 in a way, starting with games I think are generally good, up to the big stinkers on top. Also, remember that this is just my opinion and my list, so what I find scary or not scary is completely subjective and different from your tastes. That is the whole point of top 10s after all.
Zach, there goes the civilized world.
Number 10!
Resident Evil 5, while a game that I personally enjoyed quite thoroughly, is not really that scary, which is kind of a shame. The Resident Evil franchise can and has been quite scary due to the stress of not having enough supplies, having zombies popping out everywhere, and all the terrifying dark corners that you encounter. Keyword, dark corners. Dark environments, darkness. You hear that, Capcom? But not too dark. You'll see what I mean by that in just a bit. Resident Evil 5 takes place mostly during the day, which means you can see everything almost all the time. The horror genre has been using darkness and the ability to not see what's coming for you to its advantage since the beginning of film. Even Capcom knows this, since RE1 through 4 takes place during the evening. Sure, maybe Capcom wanted to reinvent the wheel and see if its crazy, angry 28-day later type zombie things would be scary on their own during the day, but nope. They aren't. And yeah, there are some times when you'd get ambushed in the game and you'd get super stressed out, but that's about how it is in most shooting-based games. That's not necessarily scary. I think the closest Resident Evil 5 came to being scary is the giant spider boss towards the end of the game. Now that is scary. It's a giant spider. Get out! Get off screen. Nah! Whew. See, that's scary to me, but mainly because spiders are the scariest things on the planet. True facts.
Number 9.
Okay, Internet, ready your pitchforks and torches because I'm about to burn the scare factor off a game that, frankly, wasn't even that scary to me. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is... Hey. I love the FNAF franchise, I love Scott Cawthon, and I'm not even going to surprise jump scare you this episode. So cool the jets, pump the brakes, and let's rewind a little bit. Five Nights at Freddy's 3, in my opinion, is the weakest in the franchise with regard to scare factor. You all know I've reviewed them, hint hint, click click, and I've made a pretty big clear point that the saga as a whole has given me the worst case of anxiety, but that certainly does not equal scary. Depending on your game and how you approach it, jump scares sometimes do not equal scary. And in this case, jump scares equal I'm going to have a heart attack and quite possibly not be able to play your games anymore because of the emotional and physical commitment to completing your games, Scott. A basic fundamental mechanic of scary games is the fear of the unknown. Sometimes a game can quite literally scare without even being a threat around you because you don't know if there's something around the corner or not. With Five Nights 3, after playing for a while, you pretty much figure out when there is and when there isn't going to be a jump scare. There's also a lot to do in Five Nights 3, so much that the game gets really stressful for the wrong reasons. You find yourself doing things like venting the air, checking the camera, resetting the power, and whatnot, that you really get beside yourself with all the tasks that are given to you, and the stress really overrides the scare factor of the game. You've got the shadow jump scares, but you can avoid those most of the time if you know what you're doing. And in the end, you're going to die to Springtrap, who looks like he just wants to pull up a coffee and chill with you. Maybe he wants to sell you something.
Not enough cash, stranger. Number 8.
Alan Wake was received very well with critics and gamers alike, but it did make my list. Now remember, this is a list about horror games that just weren't scary, not necessarily games that aren't good. Alan Wake has a great story and takes you on a pretty cool journey with a writer-protagonist, which lends itself to be a great psychological horror game. This is the exact reason why I found this game not to be very scary. To be a psychological horror game, you have to really focus on messing with the player, which this game does not do. There is quite a bit of action in Alan Wake. This even goes against what the nature of the protagonist is. Sure, you can have normal people in extraordinary situations, but that is going to change how you go about the game. Definitely not mentally. Now, I'm not saying this game doesn't focus on mental at all, because it does. There is definitely a mysterious aspect of this game where you have to figure it out, but then the game takes you right out of it with action that it throws you into. Perhaps if the enemies were extremely scary, it might help a little bit, but there is very little variant in the enemies that you come across through your journey. Instead of throwing you into the action so much, Alan Wake should have made you think you were going to be thrown into the action more than you were, to create the feeling of uneasiness and fear of the unknown. Now that to me would have sold the psychological horror aspect a lot more. That makes sense, right? That makes sense?
It makes sense.
Alright, we're good.
Number 7.
Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs. Now before you start flaming me saying how this game was actually scary and that I'm out of my mind or desensitized, let me explain to you my reasoning. The Amnesia series at this point is pretty well known for its scare factor and being one of those franchises that people think are pretty damn terrifying. The first half of this game is really great. You find yourself in this dark, creepy mansion where you don't exactly know what you're facing. In fact, there's a lot of tension and build-up to not knowing what is in the mansion. And this is scary in my opinion. Where the game starts to lose me is the second half. It's also where the title of the game starts to make sense. You find out that the unknown you're up against are in fact these pigmen. Yeah, you heard me right, pigmen. At first, it's pretty interesting, but once you know that that's what the game is throwing at you, the unknown factor is gone. The game suddenly becomes a lot less scary, especially because you find it out basically right in the middle of the game. And you find out really quickly that you can just stealth your way around them to avoid any head-on confrontations. It's almost like the devs were a big fan of Ocarina of Time and wanted to replicate that Hyrule Castle moment where you can't let the guards see you as you try to get past them. To see Princess Zelda? Nope, can't see me this time. But I will say, the first game was fantastic, and the first half of this game was really good too. And I am super excited to play Soma.
Number 6.
Zombie survival horror games are classic amongst players who are into the horror genre, and some of the scariest horror games out there are a type of zombie game. Zombie U, however, is none of these things. Zombie U came out as a launch title for the Wii U, and while very fun and impressive at the time, particularly for a Nintendo launch title, it just didn't have the scare factor that I really was hoping for. Zombie U was stressful and very high risk, which is why I feel like it was a fun game at times. However, that does not make it a very good scary game. The game was never too creepy or ominous. Most of the time you would see a few zombies and just run right past them, not wanting to engage in fear of getting bit and having to start all over again. And when you got to the point where you had to engage them in combat, it felt clunky, weird, and very unmotivated. Sometimes I just thought, hey, you know what? I might be better off just becoming a zombie. Having to find your zombified previous self to get your items back is cool, but then you're just trying to do that instead of focusing on the horror aspect. The correct way of how to handle a game like Zombie U is something similarly to that of Dead Island. Using sound effects and almost slight orchestrated chaos to put fear into not just what's happening in the story, but all around you is the perfect way to keep you on your toes. Granted, Dead Island has its fair shares of issues. It, however, nailed the right of where Zombie U has some learning to do.
Number 5.
So maybe I'm the only one out there that thinks this, but when I got to the end of The Evil Within, I immediately said to myself, when does it get scary? This was such an anticipated horror game release that I was really excited to sink my teeth into it. We even played it on an unaired episode of Scary Game Squad, however we scrapped it because we weren't scared or terrified at all. And look, when we do Scary Game Squad, we get way too drunk to the point where Davis touching us is enough to terrify us.
Why would you use...
It's a shame because this was supposed to be a game that broke a lot of the generic horror genre tropes to make it truly terrifying, especially because so many creative masterminds from the previous survival horror genres were involved. In The Evil Within, surviving is a huge aspect of the game where enemies find you and you have to creatively kill them. Some will even reanimate if you don't immediately burn them. Resources aren't quite abundant and enemies can come at really inconvenient times. Add a couple of chainsaw guys in there, and the mixture of all of these should, in theory, make a pretty scary game, but the opposite happens here. The game pays tribute to the survivor horror genre, and there is so much chaos going on in this game that it ends up not being scary. There is such a focus on survivability and what goes into that the horror is actually lost in translation and even laughable at times. Well, don't get me wrong, the horror environment is pretty great in this game, but just because you're trying to survive in a scary environment does not equal a truly scary game.
Number 4.
There's definitely something in this town. Do you feel it, Zach? The coffee warned me about it.
Okay, so this game is weird. Like, really, really weird. In fact, most people that love this game like it for how strange it is. Deadly Premonition is kind of like the horror game version of the show Twin Peaks. Yeah, you know the show. Everyone knows that show. You're fired. You're fired that you don't know that show. You lost your job because you don't know that show. Sorry. Deadly Premonition is kind of like Twin Peaks. The main character talks to himself, the game takes place in some kind of Northern California setting in the middle of nowhere, and weird stuff happens. A lot of weird stuff happens. I think this is one of my major complaints with how not scary the game is. Sometimes you'll get genuinely creeped out by the ghost-like enemies or something referred to as the raincoat killer, and then the game will take you out of it by going to a weird cutscene that makes little to no sense.
Did you see that, Zach? Clear as a crisp spring morning. F.K. in the coffee.
I feel like the weirdness of this game overshadows the amount of creepiness that the game offers. Another big thing that I felt really detracted away from the game being really scary is the amount of tasks you can do. If you don't already know, Deadly Premonition takes place in a Grand Theft Auto-esque open world. This isn't a problem with the game, it's just that it gets in the way of me getting scared. I say this because there could be a creepy storyline waiting to be uncovered, and instead, I can wander around getting lost and doing mundane tasks. I feel like a part of the uniqueness of scary games is forcing you into doing something that you may not necessarily want to do.
Number 3.
The horror arcade shoot-'em-up style has been trying its darndest for years to scare people. One of my newer favorite ones is called the Dark Escape 4D, where you grasp the gun-like steering wheel so it takes your blood pressure, and then it scares the crap out of you with sound and motion. 4D, that stuff is actually really great. Well, an infamously bad arcade shoot-'em-up has got to be the House of the Dead 2. The enemies don't really look scary, there's not really a surprise factor of fighting back in any of the game. It's all just kind of one note the entire time. I guess you could say that about all arcade shooters, however, here is the difference. The voice acting is horrible.
We're meeting G over there.
I don't think I need to say any more. If you want, you can check out the review we did a while ago. But hey, if that wasn't enough for you, you know, for you home console and PC users out there, there's always Typing of the Dead. Dear God.
Number 2.
Her purse and ran away. She had to run and hide. He sunk even more. He had nothing coming.
Number 1.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
To say that the Saw franchise is popular would be an extreme understatement. I mean, everyone likes the Saw movies. Okay, maybe not everyone, but enough people to make 7 of those damn things, with one of them being a 3D extravaganza. Hey, I can't blame them for making that many. If it works, it works. There's something about watching a slow train wreck of violence, gore, and suspense that really captures your attention. One thing about these movies is that they aren't really that scary, but they do in fact provoke a lot of uncomfortable feelings that line up with how good a horror game or film should be. Which brings me to my next point. The fact that there is no point. Saw the movie, the video game. Alright, first off, with a title like that, it's already hard to take it seriously. When you dive into this game, the first thing you'll notice is, holy crap, look at the graphics! They're so bad. The game was made in 2009 on the Xbox and PS3. That's plenty of time to make a good-looking game. A little production value might help to scare me a little bit, but this, no way. Oh. Well, that makes sense, but they were only the distributors and the producers, not really the developers of the game. Many times you can't even tell what's supposed to be scary, and by the time you figure it out, that moment has already passed. In fact, you can't really see anything most of the time anyways because it's too damn dark. Got a flashlight? Great. It ain't gonna help you here. Saw the movie, the video game, couldn't even get the rights to the official Saw theme, which by all means is some of the most iconic horror music out there right now. And that alone would have set the tone for the game and made it at least a little bit more scarier, but no, not in this one, folks. Yet they somehow got it for Saw 2 Flesh and Blood? Hey, at least they got Tobin Bell. He's great as Jigsaw. Just kind of wish everything else was. Surprisingly enough, this game got a score of 7.5 on IGN, which is almost as high as Destiny, which got a 7.8. And I'm just talking about how Saw isn't scary at all, not about how bad it is. Later on next year, I'm gonna be tackling the first Saw game. And if you want to really see how bad it is right now, you can check out me and Alex's Let's Play over at Super Beer Bros, where we play through the entirety of the game for your creepy and weird entertainment.
KO, man.
Well, those are my top 10 scary games that aren't really that scary at all. Let me know what your top 10s are in the comments below. And hey, did you see that Defended is back? The new style of the show is pretty solid. We've heard a lot of awesome feedback from you guys at home, and we're going to be applying it as much as we can because Defended is now back once a month on Tuesdays. Guys, thank you so much for all of your support, specifically those people over at Patreon who really made this show possible. Now, if you excuse me, here's me reacting more to the 7th guest. I really hope that you find my commentary on that very supportive and understanding of what that game means to so many different people out there. Sarcasm.